Well, you join us today in our local woods, which is quite fitting really, because today the episode is all about forestry.
That's right. We're joined by two young lady foresters today.
Mima Letts from the Chatsworth Estate.
And Lacey Rose, city forester from Ontario, Canada.
Now, both of these girls have quite diverse paths into forestry, and they do quite different things in a way. So Sharon, tell us about Mima first.
Well, Mima, when she was a student at Bangor University, thought, well, why don't more people know about this fantastic course? So she and her friends set up a social enterprise called Tree Sparks to ignite conversations about trees, aimed at 15 to 19-year-olds. And it's just been so inspiring.
And how about Lacey?
Well, Lacey's a city forester in Ontario, Canada, and she also started Women in Wood, which is a website which helps women who work in forestry chat together and be inspired by each other.
So it sounds to me like they both they're trying to get other people in the industry, which is obviously it's a thread that runs through all these podcasts so far. Sounds fascinating. I think we should let them get on with it.
Hello, this is Sharon Durden-Hollenby, and you're listening to Tree Lady Talks. All music and production is by Noel Durden-Hollenby, and all views expressed by me or the interviewee are our own. Thank you so much for joining us. So, Lacey, you're a very prominent lady in the world of forestry, beyond Canada itself, but tell me, how did you first get involved with forestry?
So I actually grew up in Labrador, which is a very isolated northern Canada, where there was no forest sector. So I didn't know what forestry was when I was growing up. I definitely spent a lot of time in the woods, at the cabin with my family. But I didn't know that. I actually thought cutting trees was a terrible thing when I was a kid. So it wasn't like an actual career path for me. But I knew I wanted to go to university and study something. I was really into wildlife, and I was lucky. I did a general year at my local college before going to university, and I had a professor there who was like, "Oh, you seem like you'd be interested in working outside." So he said, "Have you looked into forestry?" And I said, "I don't know what that is." So I looked into it, and the University of New Brunswick had a forestry program, and they were advertising a 95% post-graduation employment rate. And I was like, yes, that is what I want to do when I finish.
Oh, that's great. And were any of your family surprised or your friends surprised? Because you are a very petite lady, aren't you? If you don't mind me saying so.
Yeah, so I didn't really know that it was a male-dominated or like a burly lumberjack impression. You know, I had like no preconceived ideas about forestry. So I think like my family and friends were kind of like, oh, okay, so you're going to be working in the woods. That's interesting. But they didn't know what forestry was either. So off I went.
Yeah, brilliant. And how about you, Mima? You went to Bangor University, didn't you? How did you find out about that course?
Well, it was a complete accident, really, a happy accident at that. But I kind of went to a very academically orientated school. And I wasn't the most academic of people, but it got to that stage where we're ending school and everyone was going to uni. So I was like, oh, I have to go to uni. And I can't say, looking back, maybe it wasn't the right choice, but I was like, oh, if I'm going to uni, I'm definitely not doing a course where I just sit inside because it really doesn't suit me. And I looked into countryside management. I knew I just wanted to be outside. And then on a UCAS search, forestry popped up. And I didn't have a clue what it was, but I was like, there's a course in Wales. It's 4 years long, away from the parents, learning about trees. I thought, no, that sounds pretty good. So I went to an open day, thought, I like this, I'm going to go. And I went, did my first year of study, and it completely changed my thoughts, conceptions, everything. And kind of everything I'd thought about in terms of future life went out the window. And I thought, this is amazing. And that's kind of just, it's changed my life really. But it was a very happy accident, so.
Oh, that's brilliant. And I know that you've been a very public figure as well at Bangor University, which you've now left. But we'll come on to your social enterprise a bit later on. But Mima, what have you been doing since? Where do you work now since graduation?
So I graduated, it was a year and a month ago. So 13 months ago I graduated, and I managed to get myself a 1-year position on the Chatsworth Estate in Derbyshire, working as a trainee forester in their forestry department. So I kind of rocked up there, having not really ever had any practical experience in forestry. I've just done the stuff in the lecture room and all the theory, and I had a great time. It was an amazing year, and I learned loads. I had a really, really great boss, a really supportive team, and as you know, really lucky to work in the estate. So I didn't just get to, it wasn't just forestry. I got to learn about general land management. I got to learn about dealing with tenants and the more arboricultural side of work. And I was very lucky that last month I was asked to stay on. So now I'm 1 month into being the new assistant forester. So, yes, not.
Oh, congratulations.
Now, so yeah.
Excellent. And Lacey, you work for the municipality, don't you? Tell us about your day job and what does it mean to be a forester? Because we might have some people listening who think it's all about cutting down trees and that's a bad thing. Tell us about what you do.
Yeah, so I'm the county forester for this area, for the county of Renfrew. And I've been doing the role that I'm in now for, wow, more than 8 years, working for the county. And in terms of a forester job, it's pretty hands-on. You know, a forester can mean so many things, but in my case, it means that I'm involved in every aspect of sustainably managing a forest. So that means I'm out in the forest collecting data to write forest operation prescriptions if it is the right time to do a harvest in a forest. I'm looking for wildlife values to protect during that forestry operation, mapping them and writing the protection measures that must be applied. I physically mark trees that are to be harvested or protected. So every tree is getting evaluated out there. It's really hands-on. And then if there is a forestry operation take place, I'm out there very frequently checking and making sure that they're following all the rules that have been set. And then any regeneration work that happens after, I would plan and make sure that that gets done. So either making sure that the trees are growing back naturally or doing tree planting activities and monitoring it from then on. So it's really cool to be involved in all those time and actions to learn from what you think is going to happen to what happens and really see the forest change and develop over time.
So what about, you talk about natural regeneration and planting. What sort of rates is of woodland regenerated by natural regen, or if you're going to plant, what species do you choose?
So in the forest that I work in, about 17% of it is planted red pine in abandoned agricultural fields. So those mostly would have been planted in the 50s and 60s. And those were planted as a way to bring that area back to a natural forest condition. So we're trying to get natural forest regenerating under that. So when those trees get harvested, we have this natural forest type underneath. So white pine and red oak are the desirable ones. We often end up with like sugar maple and some growing underneath. So that's like another thing I'm looking at when I'm out there is are we getting what we hope? Are we going to have to do more work? And then like right now I have a harvest operation, and I know that this word can be a bit touchy with some people, but it's a clear cut. And that's because it's poplar. Majority of the forest is made up of poplar, which is a shade intolerant species, needs full sunlight to regenerate. So they're still there working, and the area that they've cut 2 months ago already has 2 feet tall poplar growing back in it.
I'm not surprised, actually. And what are the primary objectives of managing the state's forests?
Yeah, so obviously it's a revenue generator for. Oh, did you just ask me with that or my?
Yeah, I did. Okay, I did. What are the primary objectives of the state managing their forests? Is it revenue? Is it nature conservation? Is it recreation? Or is it all of those things together?
Yeah, it's all of those. So we have a 10-year strategic forest management plan, and obviously we're managing for what every forest is managed for: social, economic, and ecological objectives. So revenue is generated for the county, which funds our program. we're protecting wildlife and also creating different types of habitat through management because we suppress fires. This is the way that the forest is regenerating itself, is through our activities. And they're also open for public use. So people hunt in them, people hike in them. They get used for all kinds of things. So.
Oh, that's good. So do you have areas where there's waymarking and areas where you encourage people to sit and reflect? And have you noticed, if so, have you noticed an increase in people doing that during the coronavirus outbreak to get some solitude?
Yeah, so in the larger geographic area I work in, it's about half of the area is owned by the provincial government. So there's like no shortage of public land in this area. So the county is it's like less than 1% of the geographic area. So most people would hang out on Crown land because it's more abundant and like maybe closer to where they live. But we do have a couple tracts that are really heavily used. One of which we just thinned one of the red pine plantations. So we had to close some of the mountain biking trails for a couple weeks. But it's remarkable to see like how careful the operators were to not damage the trails. So that would be like a quick cleanup and get them back open. But I've definitely noticed more people out and about in the last 4 months.
Yeah, I think there's a real move back to nature to help us cope with the stress of these really difficult times. And Mima, tell us about being an assistant forester at Chatsworth House. It sounds very grand. What's your day-to-day job like?
It's really varied actually. I think I'm very lucky to get a really wide exposure to. I obviously have my fair share of time in the forest, away from people, doing all the things I love. But it's kind of almost, having done a trainee year, it's quite nice to almost follow it's kind of like a cyclical pattern. You kind of find yourself doing the same things kind of the same time of year with a lot of variation in between. So at the moment, we're busy doing our stock density plots. So we're going out to check all of our restock sites and our new planting sites to make sure that we've got enough trees in a certain area, and whether we're going to need to beat up the sites where we're going to need to plant more trees, because we've had quite a lot of droughts after we planted. Which is we've actually lost quite a few of our younger trees. But then, above and beyond all of that, we've got felling operations ongoing. We're really lucky. We do quite a lot of continuous cover forestry on the estate, which makes the planning a lot more interesting. And we do some clear fells, but being in a national park, having iconic landscapes, it makes clear fells and things not always the right choice for us. So we've been able to do loads of things like group shelter woods, where we've been able to go into a site. We've taken out a lot of tonnage in terms of timber, but when you're driving through the parkland, you can't even see that we've been in there, which I think is incredible. But then there's loads of other things. So one of our most kind of iconic woodlands is called Standwood, and it's the wood that provides a backdrop to the house. And so obviously that's a huge point of interest for many visitors. It's right near the main car park. It's free to enter, and it's a wonderful woodland. It's full of history. It's got loads of ancient and veteran trees, loads of historical features and water features from Joseph Paxton's times. Something I think we as a department are working on, trying to be better, engaging with the public. We don't want to be hidden. We don't want to just be these moody guys that work in the private forest. We don't go near the we're trying really hard to encourage, or to just help people understand why we do what we do. And that, yes, we've got areas of the estate which are for commercial felling. They're planted with conifer species, and we sell the timber. But then we've also got areas which are they're ancient woodland sites, and we leave them alone. We have loads of deadwood. We've got, it's a real mix of things. And I think across the estate, I'm really lucky that we've got almost every single type of woodland you can think of in the UK. We've got like ash ravine woodlands, which of course at the moment are quite, we're having to think really carefully about what we're going to do because of ash dieback. So there's just loads of things going on, and it's really, really, really fun. I think is the one way.
That sounds brilliant. So with the continuous cover forestry, I wonder if you could just explain what that is for somebody who doesn't know what that term means.
Yeah, so when we use the word continuous cover, we're talking about the canopy. So if you imagine you're on Google Earth and you're looking down at a picture of a forest, so the canopy is the green tree leaves that you can see below you. And when we talk about continuous cover, it means that we go in and we take out trees, but there's always a cover of canopy. So you're never going into, say it's a square-shaped woodland. If you're going to go in, you wouldn't fell all the trees because then the canopy would be gone. So continuous cover just means that you're not taking out all the trees in one area. So sometimes we'll go in and we'll take out a smaller group, just in the corner or in the middle. Sometimes you'll take out strips. So kind of, well, not a zebra, but that kind of design. Sometimes you'll just go in and take out 1 or 2 trees. So areas that are really sensitive, or if maybe there's just 1 or 2 trees that don't quite fit. So if you've got an ancient woodland site, but it's got a couple of larch trees in the middle that you don't want to be there, you go in and take those out. So it's about just maintaining a cover of trees while still extracting timber, I think is how to describe it.
Yep, that's really well explained. And do you have any areas of natural regeneration, say in the ancient woodland with the veteran trees? Do you have a lot of natural regen? And if so, is it the sort of species that you're looking for? Do you have to do any eradication of, say, non-natives, for example, like rhododendron?
Yeah, so we've again, the woodlands kind of that are behind the house, when they were originally all planned, obviously the house has got very elaborate gardens and it borders onto a parkland, which is quite different to kind of what you class as a forestry forest, a productive working forest. But back when the gardens and the wood were designed, the woodland was kind of seen as this extension to the gardens. And so we've got a lot of, it's obviously mainly a hardwood forest, so it's mainly native broadleaves, oak, sycamore, ash, sweet chestnut, things like that. But obviously it's also got a fair few kind of what you'd think is they're called specimen conifer trees. These really weird, you're walking and suddenly there's a monkey puzzle, suddenly there's some random conifer trees. And so for that bit of woodland, we're leaving them in because they're a really nice addition to the woodlands and they fit with the theme. But it also does mean we've got areas of really dense rhododendron, which is obviously put into, it used to signify wealth and something exotic and all of that. But now it's obviously causing a problem in terms of shade cover and it harbouring diseases for trees. So that's something we have to go in and remove. And when we think about regeneration, there are some areas, once we've kind of felled, we want to rely on natural regeneration rather than planting. So we've just done a seed tree felling, which is another kind of continuous cover. So we've gone in and it's an area of spruce and oak. We've removed all of the spruce, but left the oak trees. So we've left best oak trees, so they're really straight trees, not many branches, a really nice kind of rounded canopy. With the hope that when the oak trees drop their acorns, it will form an understory of oak, and so that when the other oak trees are mature enough, we can go in and take out the larger oak trees and leave behind this legacy of more oak trees to come. Across all of our sites, we get natural regeneration as well as the stuff we plant, and sometimes it's a case of just respacing it. So if you've got too much natural regeneration in an area, you go in and you just move the trees around to make sure they're not going to crowd each other out. But it's nice that we've got that option and we can use it as another way to kind of keep the diversity of the woodlands.
And also the genetic heritage as well. You're actually growing trees that are suited to that area because they're coming from the parent tree. So that's brilliant.
You're listening to Tree Lady Talks with Mima Letts from the UK and Lacey Rose from Canada.
I wonder really with both of you about community engagement. So back to you, Lacey, working as a city forester, do you have programs where the community can get engaged with the woodland and the forest management at all, other than just walking or biking through? Any educational activities, for example?
Yeah, so that's the part of my job that I enjoy the most, I think, is I call it like education and outreach. So I do go to classrooms pretty often whenever requested and talk to kids of different ages about what forestry is, what we're doing on the county forests, and maybe jobs that they might think about when they grow up that they might want to do in the forest sector. Also, over the last 5 years, we've really upped our game, like as a forestry community in this area, getting kids into the woods to learn about forestry. So for the past 5 years, we've partnered with an organization called Forest Ontario that brings whole classes into the woods. And we've done a couple different variations, like either taking them to an active harvest operation so they can see that happen, talk to the operators, and then a mill to see what happens to the wood after. or a little part of that, and alternatively we do forestry skills and then visiting a mill.
Mm-hmm.
So, the teachers that have keep coming back with their classes every year. So we've got quite a few through that. I'm also lucky to sometimes be involved. We have a outdoor education center here, the Shaw Woods Outdoor Education Center. And a couple times throughout the year, we kind of have like forestry days. They bring more than 3,000 kids a year through their education center. So it's become a really big pillar in the society. And it's actually owned by like a mill family that I think is 5 generations operating a mill in this area. But they want that land to be used to teach kids about forests, not specifically forestry, but just like nature in general. So like it's big time about the youth. We have like National Forestry Week in Canada.
Oh yeah.
In September.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, so different places all over Canada are kind of organizing activities, and one that I've done a past couple, I think it's 3 or 4 years now. This was an attempt to get the non-converted out. I have a couple friends who are yoga instructors, so we did a hike and yoga event during National Forestry Week. So then I get to talk about forestry on a guided hike through an old growth forest, and then my friend teaches a yoga class outside. So
how fabulous.
People come for the yoga, but then they have to listen to me talk about forestry first. So it's a good way to get a non-traditional audience out there. And then as far as like the county goes, we do, we have like public reviews of our forest management plan. But people are, they're used to forestry around here. We don't really have a lot of issues with engagement. I deal with people on an ongoing basis if they have any concerns or comments, or the most common questions we get are, can I hunt on county forests? Is it okay if I hike here? That kind of thing. So yeah.
You don't have any objections about felling, timber extraction at all from members of the public, or is it just so part of the culture there in Ontario that it's just a given that that's what happens?
Strangely enough, so in general, in rural areas is not where you would get the opposition. Occasionally people have questions, and adjacent landowners would like to talk about it and make sure that their interests are protected, and that they'll still be able to enjoy it. It's more of an education progress, but very often environmental groups located outside of these areas are the ones raising issues in Ontario about forestry, and a lot of the information that's presented is not correct, from a forestry professional's perspective. And that's where we really need to up our education game as forestry professionals about getting the correct information out there so that the public doesn't get misinformed.
Yep, absolutely. And that's part of the reason for this podcast series, is to let people know about the jobs that you do. And Mima, you talked also about upping your game with community engagement, because you have a lot of visitors to Chatsworth. It's an absolutely stunning property, isn't it? It's really quite well known. So what have you got planned, and what sort of engagement do you do?
Well, we've always been keen. My current boss, John Everett's been here at Chatsworth for the past, I think, 4 or 5 years. So since he's come, he's been really keen he's like me, he's really keen to share what he does because he's passionate, and I absolutely love what I do. And I think it's a shame that more people don't understand the work that we do and why it's important. So one of the big things I'm working on at the moment is some of our open access forests have got loads of trails through them, and you're walking along and you're thinking, there's this type of tree, and I wonder if I know about the history of this pond, and you kind of I want to try and unlock the knowledge for people that might not necessarily know anything about trees. And so something I'm working on is creating an app for visitors to Chatsworth, so they can come on, they can look at the footpath network, how it links in with other bridleways and network footpaths across the Peak District, and to kind of unlock what they're seeing so they can walk past the veteran tree, and it will bring up information about its age, its provenance, things about the history of the tree. So you've got things like ash trees and stuff about how their seeds used to be used to make tea and to cure cattle of foot rot. And I think something like that I'm really excited to be able to be a part of and to be able to do as part of my job, is to just help people understand what we do. And something else that we've been a part of was Google did an expedition series. They brought out 360 cameras to come and film and take pictures of some of the day-to-day jobs you do. So part of their expedition series, we've got some miniature tours. We've got one of our arborists, Chris, who's up a tree doing the dismantle, which is just incredible when you're in a tree in the park of Chatsworth and you can see all around you, and he's just at the top of this tree, chilling out as he normally does. We've got things like watching a timber wagon load up timber, because again, it's not something people really think about. You fell the trees as well. How do you actually get the timber off the site and to use it? And so all of that's been really fun. We've also been really lucky that Chatsworth, being the kind of iconic location and heritage feature that it is that we get quite a bit of media attention, mainly for the house and for the family and all of that stuff. But obviously last Christmas we were lucky to be on the TV, and during the extended edition we got to talk a little bit about our harvesting activities. We got to show one of our harvesters on the television, which again, I think they're absolutely incredible machines, and it's not something I'd ever seen before I came into forestry, apart from like Lego sets. And to see them working in real life is just mind-blowing, and I still love going to active sites. And so I think we're lucky that we've got loads of different channels to be able to share what we do. So,
and moving to you two personally, you've both been real inspirational ladies in the forestry field. So Lacey, you're involved with Women in Wood, which is a way of ladies getting together and sharing their work experience. Tell us how that's going.
Yeah, so Women in Wood has been active for more than 5 years now, and it's basically a networking group for women who work in, with, and for the woods. When we started out, just me and my friend Jessica Kaknavicius, we were like, we're usually the only women at these forestry events. Why don't we start a rebuttal to the old boys club? But it's really grown a lot since then. So we're up to more than 1,500 women in Canada, the US, and the UK and beyond.
Wow, that's brilliant.
And it's really just women supporting each other, women inspiring students and young women to choose a career in forestry. Mentoring and mentee relationships have developed, and just kind of a discussion forum for anything that might arise. It's just running itself now, so it's really cool. But we have also had events, and we're trying to start doing some online kind of meetings or training for skills that women might feel that they're missing, or issues that they would like to learn more about.
I just think it's so nice for people to see that foresters look a whole range of different type of people, just like the rest of the population, and that's really inspiring. And you've also been involved with the YouTube series Mighty Jobs, which is absolutely brilliant. So tell us a little bit about how you've been traveling around doing these jobs. Yeah,
that's been really fun. Definitely not something I ever would have applied to do or saw myself doing. I feel kind of weird being on camera, but I'm a host for a series for heavy equipment engines, of all things. We've been to India, Norway, Finland, Spain, a couple more places, Sweden a couple times, and just trying out these pieces of equipment and talking to the operators, and it's been really fun. I've learned a lot.
Well, we've got we're going to have links to both of those on our website, the Sharon Hosgood Associates website, the Tree Lady Talks tab. So check it out. It's absolutely brilliant. And Mima, you started off, you were concerned, as we all are in the UK, by the lack of people coming forward to train in trees and the outdoor world generally. So you really did something about that with Tree Sparks, didn't you?
So I think when I initially got into forestry, I just thought it was just me that didn't know anything about it existing. I thought everyone knows this. It's just because I've grown up in a farming community and I've never really left. I went on holiday to the same location every year for the first 18 years of my life. So it's not like I was well travelled at all. And it was only after my first kind of 2 years at Bangor and I spoke to other people, other students, I was like, no one really does. People still don't know this exists. And I remember I was really lucky to work as an activity instructor during the summers. So I got to live in the forest and teach kids like bushcraft and take them on expeditions and just teach them about the natural world. And I remember one child, so they're all at kind of the stage of they were deciding what they want to do with their lives, at stage of choosing which subjects to take and whether they're going to go to college or do A levels. I remember talking to one young lad And I was like, oh, what are you going to do now you finish your GCSEs? He says, oh, I'm going to college to study business. I was like, oh, okay, it's a good choice. And I remember he turned to me going, oh, it'd be really cool though if you could just work in a forest, wouldn't it? And just, decide what happens to the trees and look after.
Yeah.
And it was that me going, oh, I'm doing that, and it's a real job, and you can make money out of the trees. And the look of kind of amazement on his face. And I think it touched me that the next year he came back to the camp as a mentor, and we recognised each other, and I was, oh, how's it going? And it was just that, it was a really kind of heartwarming moment for him to turn around. He was like, thank you for telling me. He was like, I jacked in business studies and I changed, and I decided to study countryside management instead. And I think it brought it home that if a 5-minute conversation can have that sort of impact, imagine what impact you could have if you actually put some thought behind what you're doing. So that's kind of how Tree Sparks was born.
And so Tree Sparks has a website, and it's aimed at 15 to 19-year-olds, isn't it? And it's been really, really successful, and we're all in awe of you for doing it. So do you have a team of volunteers who go into schools, or how does it work?
We're quite lucky. I mean, obviously we've had some downtime during the pandemic, but we've been lucky that from the beginning we've always been like an online community. And I work with a team of, it's a small team of us. We're all now, I think, Bangor graduates. And I'm actually the only forester on the team, which probably sounds bizarre, but I've managed to hijack people from different disciplines because they're good at different things, mainly geographers. So we're now a very geographically diverse team. I've got myself here in the Peak District. I've got another team member in Aberystwyth in Wales, another one in London, and we kind of do all the behind the scenes business running and working out what we're going to do. And I normally come up with some wacky ideas that no one think will work, and then they end up working, and everyone else helps me achieve them. But we're just starting to try and take on some interns for this coming year. So we're going to try and get some more students on board to, obviously it's not practical forestry skills, but we're trying to offer the softer skills that you don't really get the chance to learn about or experience at uni. So it's things like social media management, organisation, accounting, all those weird things that you wouldn't think were important for forestry, but actually when you get a job, you realize
they really are.
They are. You have to be good at talking to people that don't know about trees. You have to know where your money's going, where you're not going to make any money. And we've got lots of fun things coming up. So
that's absolutely brilliant and really, really inspirational, because we have a problem, as you say, with young people just not knowing that there are these exciting jobs out there outside, be it forestry, arboriculture, landscape, ecology, and we have a real shortage of people coming into university and those people taking up employment otherwise. So we really need role models like you, and also we need a greater diversity in the industry, not just gender, but of all different people of all different backgrounds, because we can't keep talking in an echo chamber, can we? And we need great diversity of thought. So I just want to close off. I always ask people what their dream scenario would be. And so I'll start with you, Lacey. If you could wave a wand in forestry, what would be your dream scenario? What do you really hope for?
My dream would be if the general public came to love and appreciate forestry like I do, and kind of have the understanding that people who work in the forest love the forest as much or more than they do. So to kind of just shift the tide of the public perception of forestry would definitely be my dream perception, my dream scenario.
Thank you. And Mima?
It's a really good question. I kind of echo Lacey's thoughts. I love it for I suppose I'd love it for the public to all look at foresters and think we're legends. I think my dream is for, I mean, I love all the work I do with Tree Sparks, but I suppose my long-term aim is for Tree Sparks to not need to exist. I'd love it for young people to get to doing A-levels or to think about college or uni, to think, oh yeah, forestry, yeah, I'm going to do that. And I'd love forestry courses to be oversubscribed, and I'd love forestry to be a household word that people could use and not just think about guys with axes cutting down trees, and then to think about wildlife, restoration and public access and all the other things. So foresters as legends.
I love that.
Well, I think you two are both legends, and I thank you so much for your time today. So really, we're saying that forestry is for everybody. It's about balancing timber extraction, providing the useful product, and nature conservation, and people's well-being, and it's an utterly fascinating career. So I just want to thank you so much for your time, both from Canada and the UK, and take care. Thank you.
Well, I have to say, I had no idea there was so much involved in forestry.
It's a really complex job and one they absolutely love.
And what's really interesting is the way that, Mima is using Tree Sparks as a way of getting people involved in what she does. And Lacey is, by being a presenter on a YouTube channel, is also advertising it in a different way.
And bringing women together, women in wood. So if people can see foresters looking completely different to their expectations and stereotypes of a bloke with an axe, it's really inspiring.
Next week, we're going in a completely different direction.
We are, because we've got to address what's happening right now. And the government is saying we're going to build. So we're going to be in conversation with a developer, Richard Collins from Landvest, to hear about how they consider the natural environment. Because we all need to work together to build better, vibrant living landscapes.